My brother Marcus made a toast at my mother's birthday dinner last April. He stood up with his wine glass, and Marcus always holds a wine glass, like it's a prop, like he's already imagining the photo, and he started talking about how proud he was of himself, his business, his new apartment in the short north, his client list. He'd been building toward this speech for 20 minutes through appetizers, through the bread basket, through the way he let the waiter take his card before anyone else could offer. I was sitting at the far end of the table. There were 14 people there. My Aunt Carol, her husband Ray, 3 of my cousins, my mother at the head in the blue dress Marcus had picked out for her, and Marcus standing up smiling at the room. Then he looked at me. Renata has never really understood what it takes to build something from nothing, he said. She's always played it safe. Steady paycheck, steady apartment, steady little life. He smiled like he was being affectionate. We're proud of you too, sis. I just wish you'd taken more risks. The table laughed. A few people shifted. My Aunt Carol said Marcus in that quiet way that means nothing. My mother nodded. I picked up my water glass and I did not say anything, but I had found the form 3 weeks earlier, the one with his handwriting on it, and I'd spent those 3 weeks being very, very quiet. If you have ever been the one in your family who holds everything together while everyone else takes the credit, stay with me. This one's for you. Growing up, Marcus was the one my mother talked about at church. My son Marcus, he's going to be something. She said it like the rest of us weren't in the room, and we weren't, really. My older sister Patricia was off at college by the time I was 10. My father had been gone since I was 7. It was me, my mother, and Marcus, and from the beginning, the equation was simple. Marcus was the future, I was the present, the one who did the dishes and checked the mail and kept the lights on by not making noise. Marcus was charming, genuinely. He could walk into a room and within 20 minutes know everyone's name, what they did, what they wanted to hear. He sold cars for a while. Then he did something with real estate marketing. Then he talked about opening a business. There was always a next thing with Marcus, always a version of himself that was about to arrive. The family loved the promise of Marcus. They didn't need the receipts. I became a payroll auditor because numbers don't perform. A number is what it is. I spent 12 years watching other people's spreadsheets and I got good at knowing when something was off, not because I'm suspicious by nature, but because the work trained me to notice zaps. A missing entry, an authorization that doesn't match the timestamp, a routing number that belongs to a different account than the one named on the form. I was not looking for anything when I found the form. I want to be clear about that. I work for Hartfield Manufacturing. We have about 340 employees, and part of my job involves auditing third-party HR software integrations, making sure that payroll advances, contractor payments, and vendor disbursements are all going where they're supposed to go. In February, we brought on a new HR software platform. During the migration, I was reviewing flagged records from the old system, things that didn't transfer cleanly, anomalies in vendor files, that kind of thing. Routine 1 record came back with an address error. The software had flagged it because the business address in our vendor file matched a residential address in our system, which sometimes happens when a small contractor uses their home office. Standard. I pulled the original authorization form to verify. The business name was Okafor Creative Solutions. The registered address was 42 Swansine Whitmore Lane 1, Columbus, Ohio. That was my address. My apartment, I sat with that for a minute. I thought maybe I'd misread something. I typed the address again. It was mine. The business wasn't in our vendor system as a current contractor. It had been removed from the file 18 months ago, but it had received 3 disbursements before that, listed as consulting services. The authorization form was handwritten. The signature for the business owner was not mine, but the handwriting on the form, the print, the way the letters sat, the specific way the G's curved. I had seen that handwriting my whole life. I folded the form and put it in my bag. I didn't make a copy yet. I just sat there with my coffee going cold and looked at the stain on the corner of the page where my cup had been sitting. I did not call Marcus. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't mention it to my cousin Dominique, who is the family's main information channel and who loves Marcus with the loyalty of someone who has never been burned by him. I went to the Franklin County Clerk's office on a Thursday morning. Before work, Okafor Creative Solutions was registered as a sole proprietorship in Ohio in 2018. That's 5 years ago. The registered agent was listed as Marcus Okafor. The registered business address was 4219 Whitmore Lane, my apartment, which I had moved into in 2017. I'd never heard of this company. The owner field had 2 names, Marcus Okafor and Renata Okafor. I asked the clerk if I could get a copy of the full filing. She printed it out and I stood at the counter and read the whole thing twice. My name was on the ownership line, my address, my name. A business I had never signed anything for, never discussed, never agreed to. The filing included a copy of an ID. It was mine, my Ohio driver's license, the one I'd had from 2016, which I had reported stolen in 2018 and replaced. I drove to work. I sat in the parking lot for 11 minutes. Then I went in and I did my job. I didn't go straight to the disbursements. I went slower than that. I pulled the vendor payment records for Okafor Creative Solutions from our old system. The 3 consulting payments that had been made before the account was removed. The payments totaled just under $9,000 across 14 months. Each one had been authorized by our previous HR director, who left the company in 2021. The authorizations looked clean on the surface. A contract on file, deliverables noted, approvals in place, but the bank routing number on the payment destination, I recognized it. It was the routing number for Midland Savings and Loan, the specific branch on Morse Road. That was the routing number for the joint savings account my mother had opened for Marcus and me when we were teenagers. We'd both had access. I closed my access to it in 2019 because I opened my own account at a different bank. But the account itself, Marcus would still have access, $9,000 in consulting payments, authorized against a business registered to my stolen ID. Payments routed to an account I used to share with my brother. I sat back in my chair and I was very still for a long time. Then I thought about the 12 years of Marcus borrowing money. 300 here, 800 there. I'll pay you back when the contract comes through. I'll have it by next month, Renata, I promise. The times I'd transferred money to his account because he said his rent was short. The 2 times I'd paid his car note. The $5,000 I lent him in 2020 that he never mentioned again. I had thought we were family. I had thought it was family helping family. But this was not borrowing. Borrowing requires the other person to know. Would you stay quiet if your family had been doing this for years, and no one in your family believed you over him? Tell me in the comments. I need to tell you something about my mother and Marcus before I keep going, because otherwise the rest of this won't make sense. My mother, Celestine, is a good woman in most ways. She's generous. She remembers birthdays. She made sure we had Christmas even in the years we had nothing. She worked 2 jobs for a decade and she did it without complaint. But Marcus is her blind spot. Has been since he was born. When Marcus was 17, he crashed my uncle's car and told my mother it was a hit and run. My uncle knew it wasn't. My mother chose to believe Marcus. When Marcus was 24 and lost his apartment, my mother told the family he'd moved to save money while he was sleeping on her couch for 8 months. When Marcus started the real estate marketing thing and it didn't work out, she told everyone the economy was to blame. It's always something external with Marcus. My mother provides the explanations, so when I started asking careful questions, not about the form not yet, but about Marcus's business, about how it was going, whether he had office space, my mother got that particular look. The one that means she's already decided the conversation is about to turn into an attack. Why are you asking about his business? She said. I'm just curious. You've never been curious about his business. You've always been competitive with him. I said I wasn't being competitive. She changed the subject. That was the moment I understood I was not going to get any information from my mother. And I understood something else. If I brought Marcus into a room and told my mother what I'd found, she would find a way to make it my fault. Not deliberately. Not because she's cruel, because she has never in 30 years admitted that Marcus could do something truly wrong. Admitting it now would mean rethinking too much. I needed more than a county filing. I needed something she couldn't explain away. My cousin Dominique is 28. She works at a title company downtown, and she is, by nature, someone who knows things. She's not malicious about it. She just moves through the world, collecting information the way some people collect receipts. Not for any specific reason, just out of habit. I called Dominique in March and I did not tell her what I'd found. I asked her how Marcus was doing. She said he was good. I asked if he'd mentioned his business lately. She said he'd been talking about a big contract, very vague about the details. Then she said, "You know he told Mom that you asked him for money last year." I went quiet. He said you called him in a bind and he helped you out. Mom's been telling people that. I told her calmly that had never happened. There was a pause. Then Dominique said, I didn't think that sounded right. I asked her if she'd be willing to forward me anything Marcus had said about my finances. She was quiet for a second. I told her I wasn't starting drama. I told her I'd found something and I needed to know how far the story had spread. 2 days later, she forwarded me a text thread. It was Marcus and Dominique from 8 months ago. Marcus complaining about me, about how I'd always been ungrateful, how he'd carried her through some rough patches and now she acts like I owe her. There was a specific line, I've covered for Renata more than she knows. She doesn't even realize how much I've done for her behind the scenes. I read that line 4 times, covered for me, done things for me behind the scenes. He had been building a story. Not just to Dominique. He had been building it for years, a version of reality where he was my benefactor, where I was the one who needed help, where any debt or obligation ran from me to him, the business registration, the payments, the forwarded texts. Now I needed the bank records. I went to Midland Savings and Loan on a Tuesday afternoon with my ID, the county filing showing my name on the business registration, and a printed copy of the bank routing record from our payroll system. I spoke with a branch manager named Patricia, not my sister, just the same name. I explained that I had reason to believe my name had been used without my authorization on a business account. I showed her the county document. She asked me to wait and she went to the back. She came back 20 minutes later. She said there was a business account under Okafor Creative Solutions. My name was listed as a co-owner. The account had been opened in 2018. It was still active. I had not opened that account. She showed me the signature card. The signature for my name was not my signature. It was close. Whoever did it had my general handwriting style, but the R in Renata was wrong. I signed my R with a specific small loop that I've done since grade school. This signature didn't have it. She said I could file a dispute and an identity fraud report. She could freeze the account pending investigation. I asked her to freeze it. Then I asked her for the account history. The account had received 9 deposits over 3 years matching our payroll disbursements. It had also received 41 other deposits, varying amounts, some small, 400, 300, some larger. There were regular withdrawals, most of them to a personal account in Marcus's name. I looked at the larger deposits. Some of them matched exactly, to the dollar, the amounts I had transferred to Marcus over the years. Loans. Money I'd sent because he said he needed help. He had been depositing my transfers into a business account in both our names, which meant on paper those weren't loans from a sister to a brother. They were owner contributions, my contributions, to a company I didn't know existed. I thanked Patricia. I drove home. I did not call Marcus. I called an attorney instead. If you've ever been the strong one in a family that only reached out when they needed something, that used your name, your address, your money, subscribe. These stories are made for people who finally stop carrying everyone. Her name was Gail Hensley. She had an office in Westerville and a very clean desk, and the kind of energy that does not waste time. I laid everything out: the county filing, the payroll records, the bank account, the text messages from Dominique, the ID discrepancy on the signature card, 12 years of cash transfers to Marcus's account. She listened without interrupting. Then she asked me 3 questions. First, had I ever signed anything related to Okafor Creative Solutions? I had not. Sec, had I ever knowingly given Marcus permission to use my address or my name for a business purpose? I had not. Third, did I want to pursue this criminally, civilly, or both? I told her I wasn't sure yet. I told her I wanted to understand everything before I decided anything. She said the unauthorized use of my identity on a business registration was actionable. The forged signature on a bank account was potentially criminal. The payments routed through a company I didn't know about, using a business address that was my home. All of it was worth documenting carefully. She said something else that stayed with me. She said, "The question isn't just what he did, it's how long the people around him allowed the story he told to stand unchallenged." I thought about my mother nodding at Marcus's toast. I thought about Dominique's text thread. I thought about 12 years of "I'll pay you back, Renata." Gail filed to dissolve the business registration. She sent a formal notice to the bank. She drafted a letter to Marcus that I did not send yet, not because I was scared, but because my mother's birthday dinner was 6 weeks away, and I had decided where I wanted Marcus to be when he found out I knew. I went about my normal life for 6 weeks. I went to work. I audited payroll files. I had lunch with a friend from the office. I called my mother twice and said nothing about any of it. Marcus called me once. He was cheerful. He said he was looking forward to Mom's birthday. He said the new apartment was great. He mentioned, casually, like it was nothing, that he'd been meaning to pay me back for that thing a few years ago. That thing, I said. Which thing? He said, I don't remember exactly. We'll figure it out. I said, sure. He said, you should bring a date to Mom's dinner. You've been alone for too long, Renata. I told him I'd be fine on my own. After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table for a while. I was thinking about how good he is at it, the lightness, the way he moves through a conversation like nothing could be seriously wrong because he's decided it won't be. He's been doing it his whole life and nobody has ever made him stop. I had a folder on my kitchen table. I had printed everything and put it in a manila envelope: the county records, the bank history, the payroll forms, the text thread from Dominique, the attorneys filing confirmations. Gail had advised me on what I could and couldn't say publicly. I understood the lines. My cousin Dominique called me 4 days before the dinner. She said she wanted me to know that Marcus had been telling people, more people, recently, that he'd set Renata up with some business income a few years back when she needed help. He was expanding the story. Getting ahead of it, I told Dominique I appreciated her telling me. I told her to come to the dinner. The private event room at Greystone Steakhouse had a long table, 14 chairs, and a bar set up in the corner that Marcus had arranged. He loved arranging things. It made him feel in charge. My mother sat at the head. She was in the blue dress. She looked genuinely happy, which hurt a little to see, because by the end of the night the dinner was going to be different than she expected. I sat where Marcus couldn't easily see my bag. We got through the salads. We got through the toasts, Aunt Carol's, my cousin James's, my mother's own few words about being grateful for her family. Marcus sat back in his chair with the comfortable ease of someone who is used to being the best-looking person in a room and knows he's about to speak. He stood up. He talked about his business, about his apartment, about how proud he was to be providing for himself after a long road. He said our mother had believed in him when no one else did. He glanced at me when he said that. He talked about how some people play it safe their whole lives and never build anything. He was almost at the end of his speech when I said his name. Not loud. I didn't need to be loud. Marcus. He stopped. Can I show you something? He smiled. Renata, I'm giving a toast. I know, I'll wait. He finished. He sat down. People looked at each other. My mother looked at me with that expression, the one that means she already wants to smooth this over. I reached into my bag and I took out the manila envelope. I didn't make a speech. I'm not Marcus. I slid the first document across the table toward him. The county filing, Okafor Creative Solutions, both our names. He looked at it. His face didn't change right away, but something in his jaw tightened. What is this? He said. A business registration filed in 2018. My name is on it, my address is on it. I looked at him. I didn't sign this, Renata. His voice was patient, almost amused. This is not the time or place. When would be a good time? I asked. Not angry, genuinely asking. He looked at my mother. She was looking at the paper. I slid the second document across, the bank account signature card. The signature for my name isn't mine, I said. The R is wrong. I've signed my name this since I was 9 years old. My mother said, Marcus, what is this? He said, Mom, she's twisting things. She doesn't have the full picture. I slid the third document across, the payroll disbursements from Hartfield, $9,000 routed to an account in a company I co-owned on paper. This came through my employer's vendor system, I said. I found it during a routine audit. The table was quiet. My Aunt Carol had her hand over her mouth. Dominique was watching Marcus. Marcus said, You've always had a victim mentality about money. That's why you're still in that cubicle. I had been waiting for something like that. I had been waiting for the version of Marcus that showed up when he had no other options. I looked at him for a moment, then I put the text thread on the table. Dominique's forward, his messages. The line about covering for me, the line about doing things for me behind the scenes, Dominique said quietly from the other end of the table. I sent those to her, Marcus. He looked at Dominique, then at me, then at my mother. My mother was not nodding. For the first time in the 30 years I had watched her believe every version of Marcus he chose to offer, she was not nodding. She was reading. Marcus tried 4 different approaches before the dinner was over. First he said I had misread the documents. He said there was an explanation and I hadn't let him explain. I told him to explain. He said it was complicated. Then he said the business had been his idea and he'd added my name as a formality for tax reasons and he hadn't thought I'd mind since we were family. He said the payments were for work I would have done if I'd been involved. He said he was gonna make it right. My mother said, What work? She didn't know about any of this. That was the first time in the night my mother said something that did not protect him. He moved to the third approach. He said I had always been jealous of him, that I'd spent my life waiting to tear him down, that I was doing this in front of the family because I'd always resented his success. My Aunt Carol said, Marcus, that's enough. He sat back, and then, the fourth thing, his voice dropped. He said he'd been under a lot of pressure. He said the business had gone through a hard stretch. He said he'd made some decisions he wasn't proud of and he was going to deal with them. That was the closest he got to anything real. My mother asked him point blank, Did you use your sister's name and her address and her ID without her knowledge? He didn't answer. She asked again. He said, It's not that simple. She put the county filing down on the table and she looked at him for a long time. Then she looked at me. I'm sorry, she said. Renata, I'm sorry. Marcus left before dessert. He said he needed air. He didn't come back to the table. The attorney's filings had already gone through by the time of the dinner. Okafor Creative Solutions was in the process of dissolution. The bank had formally separated my name from the account and flagged the disputed transactions for review. Marcus no longer had access to the business account. In the weeks after, I did not hear from Marcus directly. He sent one text that said we should talk when things calm down. I did not respond. My mother called me 3 times. The first call she cried. The second call she asked questions about the documents, specific questions about the ID, about the signature. She wanted to understand it, not explain it away, actually understand it. That was different. The third call she said she had asked Marcus to come to her house and explain himself. He'd canceled twice. I told her I didn't need her to fix it. I told her what I needed was for her to stop telling the version of the story where I was the problem. She said she would. My cousin James, who had been at the dinner, told me afterward that he'd had his own money go missing from a family account he'd shared briefly with Marcus years ago. He'd never said anything because he didn't think anyone would believe him over Marcus. That one stayed with me. I don't know how far back it goes. I probably don't know all of it. Gail said pursuing full restitution would be long and I'd have to decide how much of my time I wanted to spend in that direction. I'm still deciding. What I do know is this. For 12 years, Marcus was telling a story about me. Unreliable, needy, the sister who never quite made it. He told it to my mother, to Dominique, to anyone who would listen. He told it so often that he started to believe it himself. And so did enough of our family that it became the air I breathed at every holiday table. I found a payroll form with a coffee stain and it started to come apart. I am still in my cubicle. I still audit payroll files and flag discrepancies. I am still, in the ways my family used to say it like an insult, steady. But Marcus is not standing at any tables making toasts anymore. And the people who used to nod along have the paperwork now. He called me a failure in front of our whole family. I let the paperwork do the talking. If this story made you want to go check a bank statement, a business filing, a family promise that never quite added up, subscribe. Every lie leaves a paper trail, everyone.